Hello everybody. So in the previous screencasts we looked at how you can start activity and you can go from one activity to the next, how can you pass data and so on. In this activity is that we are going to see how an activity can start another activity and expect a result back from the second activity. So basically activity A starts activity B and then activity B generates a result and passes it on back to activity A. And that's called start activity for results. And this has a lot of use cases. For example, when you open the camera, in your application, you start the camera app is another app. So basically your app is starting another activity, so another activity in another app, and expecting back what? Expecting back something related to the file of the picture that was taken or the video that was taken. Usually it's the path of the file or video that was taken. So basically that's going to be returned back by the second activity, Okay, so to do that is straightforward. So let's reuse the project that we used. So you have the main activity, it's the launcher activity. Let's have a look at its layout. This is its layout. We click on it, goes to the second activity. Let's add maybe a text view just to display the data that comes back, right? So I'll just add a text view under it here, and let's center it. Okay. So that becomes the text view. I'll call it, for example, the returned text view or data bag, for example. I call it that. Okay, and maybe let's give it a little bit of a padding. All right, so here it is. So basically what's going to happen is that we go to the main activity, we click on a button, which is this button, and then it goes to the second activity. In the second activity, let's look at what's going on here in the second activity. So in the second activity, we remove all of this stuff, and let's remove also, let's keep the close, but I'll move it to the bottom. Okay, so we go here. I'll move the close all the way to the bottom of the screen, right? And then maybe I'll have an edit text where you enter some data, some edit text. I'll put it under here. And basically what I'm going for is that the user will enter something, and then whatever the user has entered, I'm going to, whatever the user enters is I'm going to package and then send it back to the previous activity. All right, so basically here it is. I'll call it, for example, it says person's name. I'll just say this is going to be data to send back. Okay, so here's the data that's going to be sent back. You click on the close or send. I'll call it maybe send or close. Okay, so basically close, right? Let's have two buttons. I'll have another button. One button just closes it, right? And maybe another button which is going to send the data. So here is one is going to be send, the other one is going to be close. Okay, all right, so here we go. So this one is going to be send data, send back, and it's going to be called send. Here we are, and this one is close, and it's button dot close, right? Okay. All right. So now let's go back to the second activity just quickly. Let's package the main activity first. So here we are. The main activity had a close button. I don't know why, but let's go back. It has a close button, and it's called button. Maybe we call it go to second, right? Right. Here's that button. So when you click here, you go to the next activity, right? Here it is. So when you click on that button, this is the main activity. When you click on this button, we package an intent. Now, instead of start activity, we will call it, this intent takes you to the next activity, and we can pass data if we need, but I don't need it for this example. Start, here it is, start activity for result. Okay, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one. Basically you create and you pass an intent and a request code. Let's say the request code is an integer, is an integer that identifies your request, right? So you can make many requests, but you can identify them based on the request code. So basically let's create a final static public int, and we'll call it, for example, req code, and that's, let's say, is 1, right? 100, for example, right? Okay, so that's a request code that we created. Now I'll pass this one, which is the req. This is the request code that we created, and let's start activity for results. Now the question is that where do I get the result back? So you could see that you created the activity, it goes to another activity, but it's expecting back some result. The result is here, is a method that you have to override. It's called on activity result. Here it is, on activity result. Here it is. Okay, the on activity result has several parameters. The first parameter is something called the request code. And the request code is very similar to the request code here. So basically, when the result comes back, it comes back with the request code. So you can identify this result corresponds to which request, right? So that's the request code. The result code is also an integer. It's a code to identify, was the result okay, or was there a problem, or was it cancelled, or what happened. And then the data is an intent that's going to hold the data that comes back. And basically, of course, because it's an intent, inside it there will be some extras, and you can extract data from there, right? Basically, you can retrieve data from there. So that's basically where you can get the response, right? So basically, let's say we say log, just to see if things are wired correctly. I'll do a log D here, right? And I'll say on activity results, right? So this is when we come back here, it's going to print to the log. Okay, so that's the main activity, right? Now let's go back to the second activity. Here is the second activity. This is where we are coming in, right? And basically, when you come into the second activity, right, you would like to listen to the event when the user says that button go to second. So that's the second activity. Let's go back to the layout for the second activity. And it has, one of them is send back. Okay, that's the first, it's called send back. That's the first listener the button listener that we need to set up. And then the second one is going to be the other button, which is, we'll call it, for example, cancel, right? I'm going to say no, local only. It's only going to change here. I'm going to change it here. Okay, so there is the cancel. So basically, when we cancel, we're just going to say finish, right? And when we send back, means that this is the time when we're going to retrieve the data from from here, and basically we are going to use the data from the edit text. We retrieve the data from the edit text and then send it back to the previous activity or to the main activity. So the edit text is this one. Okay, so I'll copy this and go back here, and here this is when we're going to send back. And let me get the edit text. Edit text, this guy equal find view by id r.id dot, and here is the edit text. I could do that all at the top here. Okay, and let's initialize. This is declare it here and initialize it here. Okay, so here's my edit text, right? This is the edit text. Now what I could do is I could get the string of data, right? Or maybe the entered data, for example, equals, I could say it's the edit text dot get text, right? So I got the data, right? So that's a toString, and then after that toString, right? So I retrieved the data that was entered in the entered data, and then basically I'll just have to send it back. So basically I received the data, right? So now this, when the user clicks the send back button, I'm going to retrieve the data here, and now I need to send it back. Okay, so to send it back, I need to create an intent. Okay, equal new intent, and that intent is not going to a specific activity or an action, right? So I created the intent, right? And then in the intent I could say put extra, and I, for example, could say this is data. Could, for example, entered. This is the name of the key, right? I could say entered data, for example, and then basically comma, I'll add the entered data stuff here, right? Oops. Okay, here it is. So I created the intent and put that stuff inside it, and I could say, for example, set result. So that's basically what you do. You set result, and you could see that there are two types. One of them is you're not going to send any data back, right? You could do that. Or if you have data, then you will set the result code and you will set the data. So the result code is called result OK. You could see here the result OK, result cancel. So basically let's pick result OK, and the data is the intent we created. So this will send the intent back to the previous activity, and it's going to be received where? It's going to be received here in the on activity result. And then the request code is whatever you passed on, and the result code is whatever you type in here, right? And then basically we are going to finish. Okay, that will close this activity. Now what I could also do is I could come back here. I know that it's coming back when the user clicks on cancel. I could come back here and click here, and instead of that I could just say result is cancelled, right? And don't pass any intent and finish. So in that case I could signal both cases, right? Okay, so now in the main activity, let's run this and see if this works, right? So basically we are not doing anything with the data yet, but let's see if things are wired correctly. Basically, when you click on the button in the main activity, it goes to the second activity, and in the second activity, when you enter some text or when you click any of the buttons, it should activate this on activity result, right? So it's not working for some reason. Let's have a look. Okay, remove the demo, and there has to be some error. Okay, here we are. It says that unable to start activity, null exception pointer. Now if you scroll up a little bit, it tells you on line 24. So it can't find this. It can't find this go to second. Okay, good. So we go back here, and we are here, and we called it cancel. So let me change it in the code. What was it called? Go to second. Okay, and the button is go to second. Here it is. Go back to the design, and here's go to second. Run it again. Yeah, it's mainly because this button ID is same as the button ID here. So when I change the name, it changes the name there also. So anyhow, so here we go. We are in the second activity, right? Let's do the demo, right? Okay, we are in the first activity. When I click here, we go to the second activity. It's exactly the same start activity for result. Start activity, you started activity for result. The only difference is that you're expecting some data. So let's say he entered some name here or something, and then I click on send. Notice what's going to happen in the log. It's going to print on activity result, right? Because it did trigger on activity result. You click on second activity again, I click on close, it also triggers on activity result. So basically the on activity results get triggered when you set result, either if you have a result that is okay, or if it's a result in cancelled, it will still trigger on activity result. So now on activity result, I could do an if statement if, for example, the result code, if the result code is equal to result okay, right? Result okay, then everything is fine here. Else if I could do that also if the result code is equal to result cancelled, right? And I can just print if it's okay or cancelled here. So basically this, and then I'm going to say here is the result is okay, and here is the result is cancelled. So when we run it again, you're going to see that go to the next activity. I click on send, and you could see result is okay. Click on this one, click on close, and it says the result is cancelled. And notice that this is being printed in the previous activity, in the first activity, not in the second activity, right? So you're receiving the signal back, right? Now how do I get the data? Straightforward. I could say if data, right, which is the data, which is this intent, right? This is data, which is the intent, is not equal to null, right? And data dot has extra, right? And the name of the extra is what? The name of the extra that I'm sending is entered data. So usually what we do is you create some static final string, right? Like we did in the previous static final string. And maybe we call it, for example, this is going to be data entered, for example, or something like that. So we'll call it data entered, and it's a string, so let's just initialize the string, and we do it here like this. Here we are. So that's the string to identify it, and I can use it instead of just hardcore wiring it like this. I could just say data entered, which is the variable, and then in the main activity I can come back and say, hey, if it has this name, which is the second activity dot date entered, right? So basically, does it have this? If it does, then I can bring it. I can bring that data. So basically we go here, and here we go, and then I could come here and type in the data. So how do I get the data? I just get extra, right? So we go back here, data dot, let's say this, data dot get extra, and it's a string, right? And then the name of it is second activity dot date entered. So basically I can get the data. It's straightforward. Maybe I can even store it in a string data entered equals this. Okay, Here we are. And then basically I could just concatenate it to the string here just to print it for you. So, okay, we run it again and see. Okay. Go to the second activity. Type here something. Let's say Bob Smith something. And then we click on send. And you could see that Bob Smith is printed here, right? If you don't believe me, what we could do is we already could get the label for the text field. So we go here. What's the label here? It's called text data back. And I can display it on the first activity. Okay, so this is a text view. Here it is. And I can retrieve that text view saying that text view equals find view by id r.id.text view. Here it is. And I can change its text. Okay, so we go here, dot set text to data entered. Alright, so when we run it again, what's going to happen is we go to the second activity. I type in something here, let's say Bob Smith. And when I click on send, you could see Bob Smith here. It is received back through the on activity result. It's very straightforward. Basically, you start activity for result and you have to implement on activity result. And in your activity result, you can identify. See here, I didn't use the request code. Basically, we need to have the request code here. We say if, because you can have multiple request codes, equals to request code, the one that we typed in at the top, and then you put in all your code here. Okay, so basically you can identify, is it this request code that I sent to, and this becomes going to second activity, for example. Okay, data coming in from second activity, right? Something like that, right? And basically this is the data coming in, and you can identify the data. And you can have another request code, for example, opening the camera, or for another request code to getting the list of contacts and so on. So basically these are other intents that you could fire. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.